Positioned in the liminal space between the Oval Office and the outer world, a gilded mugshot creates a visual checkpoint that frames Donald Trump's criminal indictment into a badge of honor.
Irene Jiang took this photo for the New York Times. It captures Donald Trump's mugshot from the New York Post hanging in a gold frame in a tight passageway outside the Oval Office. The location, mostly hidden, turns the entry to the president's secretary's area into a political statement.
My eye is immediately drawn to National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, who is listening to someone whispering in his ear. Combined with Waltz's face, his look back at the photographer, this whole interaction really invites us to think a little bit about conspiracy. The men are conferring quietly, perhaps confidentially, in that narrow hallway just outside the Oval Office. They are literally speaking behind the back of the blurred woman in the foreground. And who's right there with them, seemingly conferring with them? Trump himself in the form of his mugshot hanging in a frame on the wall.
The juxtaposition between the whispering officials in the foreground and the mugshot in the background emphasizes how Trump's illegality becomes a part of the "we have no shame" administration. The spatial bottleneck forces you to confront Trump's defiant image in an uncomfortably intimate setting. Literally, Trump is in your face. And to administration officials and cabinet members, it really functions as an act of intimidation on the way in and the way out.
Placing it where it is came as a bit of a surprise to me, given the symbolic power of that Oval Office space. And because Trump is the first president to have a mugshot, that means we need to recognize his mugshot is a presidential portrait. This image and its placement is actually a kind of attempt to integrate the mugshot presidential portrait into the symbolic business of the presidency in general. We can see this when we look at photos that show us how the framed mugshot fits really seamlessly into the visual display in the space of the Oval Office. It's not in the Oval Office specifically, right? It's in this narrow hallway just outside, but its placement makes it easily visible in photographs when the door to that outer oval is open. The mugshot gets integrated into the visual symbolism with which Trump really has cluttered the entire Oval Office space. There's a large portrait of Franklin Roosevelt that hangs over the door. 2 Gilbert Stuart portraits of Thomas Jefferson and John Adams. We see a portrait of Washington. And the mugshot is just hanging out in the background. And at first glance, with its gilded frame, it looks just like any of the other images.
It now serves as a background in news photographs. When you see it way in the background like that, like a little postage stamp, it does feel like another portrait. But when you know what it is, I think what it also does is almost serves as a notice or a last word about the administration's norms and Trump's respect for the law. So the fact it's sitting there is like a disclaimer that's letting everybody know that we don't really care about what goes on in there, and we're not going to be bound by it.